Mary Sophie Elisa Schultz was born on November 4th, 1874, in New Albin, Iowa. Her youngest daughter, Isabel, was the mother of my dad, William Dunning. Here's an article Mary wrote for a local paper describing her life. Ferdinand and I were married in 1894 in Lansing, Iowa, and lived there until 1902. We moved to North Dakota, and Mr. Weipert filed on a 160-acre homestead south of Rugby. He proved up on it in 4 or 5 years. In the fall of 1906, we moved to Rugby so the children could go to school. Mr. Weipert did carpenter work. In the spring, he took a job on a large wheat farm. The children and I were there during the summer. With the help of my sister Lizzie, we cooked for the farm help. In 1908, we moved to Reeder, North Dakota. It was a new place and lots of buildings going up. Mr. Weipert did carpenter work there. We were there 2 years when Mr. Weipert had a heart attack and passed away April 7th, 1910. We had 7 children, 2 boys and 5 girls. Mary 15, George 14, Herman 10, Elizabeth 7, Margaret 5, Magdalene 3, and Isabel 9 months. I did home laundry to make a living for my family. The people there were good to us. We were there 9 years. A good friend, Mr. Nick Leonards, advised me to take up a homestead in Montana. He had a son, Vincent, and a daughter, Mamie, that had filed at Kingsley. My oldest son, George, and I filed at Kingsley. Margaret went to stay with an aunt in Lansing, Iowa, and go to school. The rest of us, with a freight car of furniture, machinery, and 5 horses, started for Miles City. Stored some of the furniture in Miles City and got ready for our trip to the homestead at Kingsley. George left for the Army at Fort Lewis, Washington. We all said goodbye to him and started to Kingsley. The weather was stormy and it took 3 days to get there. Vincent and Mamie Leonard's land joined ours, so we made our home in their shack while we made a dugout barn and dug a well by hand, plowed some land, and planted corn and beans. After the crop was in, we started our home. It was a part dugout and sod house with stockade logs standing up for the front. The roof was logs and poles covered with dirt. It leaked when we had a hard rain, but it was warm. We all worked hard. In 1918, flour cost $17 a 100 pounds with subsidy. Mary and her friend Miss Leonards worked in the Weebaugh Hospital during the flu epidemic of 1918. Also, Ed DeRussell. Mary married Ed DeRussell in 1919. Mary and Ed made their home with us for several years and helped to build an addition to our house made of rock, farmed and built fence as there was no herd law then. The year 1919 was very dry. Potatoes were $9 a hundred. In 1956, Bill Dunning, his parents, and his 2 brothers traveled to Broadus, Montana to visit his grandmother's home on the Powder River. He had many wonderful memories of the trip, but had never returned. In 2017, his wife, children, and grandchildren all decided to take a trip out west for their own visit. One of his granddaughters dubbed it a trip of a lifetime. Here's our trip to Broadus, Montana.
flying. There is, you do have relatives here.
Oh, we knew that.
That's her.
Yeah, I have that. That was her picture of her definitely.
Okay, we're going.
Ted Carter Ranch. What'd you say?
Well,
She has
here.
Yeah. She has so many grandkids.
She had over 100. Wasn't that right?
It's the Yellowstone,
Oh, okay.
and then it was built up further from that
Oh,
to
okay.
be the Powder River Bank, which
Uh-huh.
now is the non-bank, is right there, that white.
That white building.
After our trip to the museum, we were directed to the assessor's office where we might be able to get some information about the land that my dad's family had owned. All 14 of us walked across the street and went into the town hall. It was lunchtime and the employees were on their way out to lunch. However, we were told that the assessor would be back within an hour or so and that he'd be able to help us out. We decided to have some lunch ourselves and enjoyed a picnic on the village grounds. We also got a nice group photo in front of the town's welcome sign. After lunch, we thought that maybe 14 of us waltzing into the assessor's office would be overkill, so just my dad and I went in. That's where we met Richard Sparks, who was a wealth of information and a pretty good detective too.
This 40 acres that's in section 23 and this 40 acres that's in section 25 is going to be his 320 acre homestead.
Okay. Now, is there a way to tell if somebody's living there now?
Yes, there is not.
There's not anybody there. There's nobody there. It was not that great.
You mean we can just
Can
drive
we
out
travel
there?
up there?
Well, so what you need to do is contact some people that are named Mangans to get permission to go there. I think they probably will let you, but it's not something,
Can be done.
well, you're going to need more direction because there is no road there.
Right.
It's going to be a cow trail. I mean, you're going to have to open 4 or 5 gates to get there and go across the pasture. I mean, it's like that. It's not going to be asphalt and oak trees.
Not here. Yeah, well, we were talking to his brother and he said, well, there's got to be an address for the post office. He says, no, there doesn't have to be an address. He said, you delivered stuff to the Whiteford Ranch and that was it. So.
Well, and back then, there was a lot of people in the country, so they were probably getting mail at, I'm going to say, God damn it, I think there was a place that was named Kingsley. Do you have a recollection? Do you have any knowledge of that? There was a place, I think, that was probably a general store and post office and like that was named Kingsley out there. Though that thing is located in such a manner that it might have been Kingsley and it might have been Broadus because it's about a wash which direction is closer because it's fairly close to here.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah.
So yeah, we can't really drive up there.
Well, I mean, you can,
We could.
but you need some help. I mean, what are you driving, first of all?
I got a
He's
Jeep.
got a Jeep.
So
We have a truck.
that would get you there.
Yeah, we got trucks and
We
a
have a
Jeep.
truck and a Jeep.
But you probably need
One's
to
four-wheel, all my four-wheel drive.
you probably need to dolly down the camper. You're probably not going to get the camper in there.
Oh,
I mean,
we
if,
got the camper over at the.
but I mean, if you're dragging a camper, that probably don't get to go in there.
Yeah,
we
if
got
you just
one
get a
scooter.
sight of it and then I go home.
Yeah, he's just.
Yeah.
That's what I want to
Let me
do.
make a phone call. Okay, so book 5, page 171. Book 5, page 171. We'll get out book 5. Okay, so this is the deed giving it to George F. Weipert from the United States of America. And this is the legal description of it. And this is the patent number. Okay. We'll get this out and photocopy this one. And this one is to Mary. So we'll get you these 2 pages.
Awesome.
Okay.
And that's where my battery and film ran out for the day. So what happened next was we went into Mr. Sparks' office and he was kind enough to call Mr. Mangan, the current landowner, to see if we could go visit the land. And he was so kind. He said, absolutely, come around 5 o'clock today. He said he was out in the hayfield, so he hoped he would be home by 5, but if he wasn't there, just to go make ourselves at home, and he would be there shortly. So we went back to the campsite until our designated time, and we looked up on the GPS to see where Cemetery Road was. Mr. Mangan said, all you have to do is go down Cemetery Road. It's the first mailbox on your left. We said, great. looked up Cemetery Road in Broadus on the GPS, and it took us about a half hour out of town to where Cemetery Road was. But we figured, hey, why not go with whatever the GPS says? So we left about 4:15, 4:30 to make sure we made it on time. And we headed out to Cemetery Road. We got on this little tiny dirt road, which turned into little ruts, which turned into not even a road. And we did pass a cemetery, and we never found a mailbox. So I kept going for a while until finally the road got too bad, and Dave told me, you have to stop or you're going to tear up the car. We had the car, we had the truck, and we had the Jeep. So we decided to pull over and look around, and my dad said no, he didn't recognize any of this. This didn't look right. So we turned around and headed back down this rough road to get onto the main street. So then we took off the correct way and ended up at Mr. Mangan's ranch, and it was absolutely beautiful. And my dad said, yep, he remembered the scenery and he remembered the area, and this looked correct. But by the time we had made it there, since we wasted all the time going the wrong direction, Mr. Mangan wasn't there. We waited a few minutes and he wasn't available. Obviously, he moved on to do whatever. So we left his home and we went to look around the area a little bit. And my dad actually found one of the barns that he remembered, which was pretty neat to see because it was the same. He had an old picture of it, and so we have a picture of the old barn along with video of the new one and pictures. And then we also ended up going down by the Powder River, and that was exactly how he remembered it too.